Welcome back to Even Tacos Fall Apart. I'm MommaFoxFire, and as always, I'm so glad you're here. Whether you're a longtime listener or new to the podcast, this is a space where we talk openly and honestly about mental health, chronic pain, overcoming adversity, and everything in between. It's raw, it's real, and sometimes it's messy, but so is life. Today's episode is a bit of a blast from the past. I am pulling this conversation from the archives way back in 2021. It was recorded during a time when so many of us were still in survival mode, facing the challenges of a world that felt like it had turned upside down. But the lessons from this conversation are just as important and relevant today as they were then. I sat down with Tanya Keenan, a clinician who works with homeless youth and survivors of human trafficking. She's spent nearly 2 decades helping people navigate some of the hardest circumstances imaginable. Tanya knows firsthand the importance of self-care, not just as a buzzword, but as a real, practical tool to maintain your mental health and well-being. In this conversation, she shares her insights on why it's crucial to take care of yourself, especially when life feels overwhelming. Self-care isn't always easy or glamorous. It's not just bubble baths and spa days. Sometimes it's making sure you've eaten something today, or setting boundaries when you know you're stretched too thin. Other times, it's finding a community or an activity that brings you joy, even if it's something as simple as playing video games with friends online. Tanya's perspective is refreshingly honest. She talks about the mental toll of the pandemic, the stress of reintegration into a post-lockdown world, and how to build resilience when you're feeling worn down. She also shares practical advice for tackling the everyday challenges that can feel impossible when you're struggling, like breaking down tasks into small, manageable steps, or finding coping strategies that work for you. This episode is an opportunity to reflect on your own self-care practices and think about what's working and maybe what's not. As you listen, I would love for you to join the conversation. Share your thoughts, questions, or even your own self-care tips. You can connect with me on social media or leave a comment on the episode page wherever you're listening. This podcast is all about community, and I would love to hear from you and for you to become a part of that. So whether you're washing dishes, out for a walk, or just taking a moment to yourself, stick around. This conversation with Tanya is full of wisdom, encouragement, and a reminder that taking care of yourself is not selfish, it's essential. Here's my conversation with Tanya Keenan on the importance of taking care of yourself.
Hello everyone, and welcome back to another Technical Issues with Mama Monday. I mean Mental Health Monday. As usual, having all the difficulties, but I think we're working through them. You might notice some background noise on my mic today. I've come to the conclusion that it just can't be helped. I don't know what the deal is. I don't know what the problem is, but we're gonna work with it here. So welcome. I hope you had a lovely weekend. We are here tonight with Tanya. We are going to be talking about why it's important to take care of our mental health, especially now and post-pandemic. A little bit about Tanya. Tanya is a clinician at Community and Mental Health Agency in Northwest Washington, provides dedicated services to under 18 housing programs for homeless youth through an interagency partnership. She has worked with homeless youth for 18 years, and this has included work with sex-trafficked youth since 2014. She is an active member of 2 county task forces to fight human trafficking, and typically utilizes a narrative, archetypal, psychodynamic approach to therapy. She specializes in geek and gamer culture and presented on the therapeutic value of video games at tags, which is where we met, which is awesome. Tanya utilizes many different cultural artifacts, music, movies, books, etc. to encourage engagement, and also has developed and facilitated the group therapeutic cinema and has used therapeutic gaming as a group modality. I've got some socials for you. I have her Twitter, Instagram, the tags presentation link. Still not too late to get that media pass if you want it. And a link to her Facebook, which I just added just a moment ago. So thank you so much for being here with us today.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
One other thing, guys, we will have a question queue open. If you have a question, you can type it directly into chat. If you want to make sure, double, triple sure that it gets seen by me, type !Q and then type it into chat, and then that will put it in there into a queue that is like in my face, can't miss it kind of thing. But I'm also pretty good about watching and picking stuff up from chat. So we'll go ahead and get started here with a great question to kind of get to know you. Can you tell us a little more about your experiences and what made you become interested in specializing in mental health?
Well, I actually had gotten a master's degree in sociology because I'm interested in people. And I was taking some other courses, master's level courses, and I took I took a course called Feminist Psychotherapy and Jungian Psychology, and I was sold. Boom, that was it. I had to do this, and so I found some more coursework. I ended up finding a PhD program. I didn't get the PhD. I got 2 years in. And it was absolutely endlessly fascinating to me. And I'm just very curious about how people work. And I really like that I have the sociology background because I also have a little bit of an understanding about people in groups as well. So it's not just person focused, it's also society focused.
Yeah, that's great. So did you, was there anything before school that you really made you become interested in thinking like, this is what I want to do? I want to be in mental health.
I don't know. I mean, I hadn't had too many counseling experiences, so that wasn't really it. I just found psychology really fascinating. Mm-hmm. But sociology is kind of where I gravitated first. And I'm completely grateful for that. Like I said, it gives me a whole different perspective.
Yeah, absolutely. So what is your favorite thing about working in the mental health field? And what have been some of the biggest challenges that you've found and faced?
My favorite thing about the mental health field is my clients. I am forever impressed by people's resilience. I am fascinated by how people manage to get through a lot of difficult stuff. I work with homeless youth, so I work with a lot of people who have experienced trauma. And a lot of times there's generational trauma, there's a lot of complex trauma, which is a fancy way of saying like trauma over a long period of time. Again, like just people survive these experiences, and they build themselves around those experiences at times, but they still manage to get through. And I'm just continually impressed and awed by my clients.
Yeah, that's an answer that I feel like a lot of people kind of say as it's for the people that I work with. And honestly, why else would you do? Would you do this job?
Exactly.
It's kind of like being a teacher. It's not the best paid job, but it's one of the most rewarding. So
right.
Yeah. So have there been any major challenges just in the field in general that you've found?
Well, right now my biggest challenge is kind of cobbling together all of my education to make a license out of it. My little Frankenstein degree. But given that I work with homeless youth, a lot of times these are youth who come in to shelter because of a family conflict. So there have been some really challenging family experiences. A lot of difficult family dynamics. And that's just tough. It's sometimes extremely rewarding as well. So, but at times very, very difficult.
Yeah. Yeah, I could see that.
And then there's also the restrictions around community mental health, what we can do, uh, having people have access to mental health is really tough sometimes, especially for underserved communities. That's been a real challenge. Getting to an appointment can be such a struggle, and so I'm always really happy when people can come to their appointments.
Yeah, absolutely. So outside of your job, what are some of your favorite hobbies? And do you feel there are any distinctions between what you consider hobbies and what you consider self-care?
Play a lot of video games.
Hey.
Hey. I would consider that a form of self-care. It's because not only is it fun just to get through the challenges that are presented in the video games, but I also have a community that actually started out in in-person games and migrated over to Discord when COVID happened. And so now we're all on Discord voice playing Final Fantasy or playing Conan Exiles or whatever. And it is just, it's really, really nice. It's lovely to have their voices. And I just really appreciate it so much. So that has been a real benefit to me. So that has been self-care, and it's a hobby. I make yogurt. It's a hobby and it's delicious. So maybe that's self-care too.
So how do you make yogurt? I've never made my own yogurt. I've never even thought about making my own yogurt.
I didn't think about it either. And then some friends made it and I was like, well, I'll try this. Sure, why not? I was sick at home like everybody else. You have to raise the temperature of the milk and then lower the temperature to a certain point, to like a very small range. And then you add a starter. So it's a lot like sourdough, right?
Yeah.
Starter. And you can use a starter from a plain unsweetened yogurt from the store, or sometimes you can get packaged starters from an online store. But you add the starter and then you just let it sit and do its thing.
That's awesome.
And 12 hours later, you have yogurt.
Yeah, that's great. My 7-year-old really loves yogurt. I just don't think I've ever thought of making it, at home. That's great.
Right. Yeah, it's cheaper and delicious. So, and then do your own thing with it. Like you can add whatever you can add whatever flavors you want.
Yeah, absolutely. So do you have a serial killer or true crime story that fascinates you?
Well, let's see. I grew up in Florida in the 70s and 80s. So Ted Bundy was very much in the news when I was growing up. And that's probably the one I'm most familiar with, just because he was so much in the news when I was in Florida. And it was always fascinating to me how to so many people, coworkers, he had a girlfriend up in Seattle, right? To all these people, he was just a normal guy. And then there was this whole other side to him. And so I was pretty fascinated by that. And just the kind of, maybe that's partially what led me to mental health too, is this idea that there's a schism that can happen, right? There's a compartmentalization that can happen with people. And now that I think about it, I also studied in graduate school. There was a class where we talked a lot about the Nazi doctors who worked in Auschwitz. And so these are people who were performing these horrendous experiments and compartmentalize themselves so much that they could then go home and be loving fathers, loving spouses. And it's fascinating to me that the mind can do that.
Yeah.
And split itself like that.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, so that was fascinating. And to be fair, I work with a lot of trafficked youth, and I've seen a lot of I've seen the repercussions of a lot of criminal activity. And so I don't watch true crime because like I get plenty of it in my work. And so but it's again, there's so much that goes into it, and how men particularly are acculturated to this idea that they can purchase people for this purpose.
Yeah. Going back to the yogurt part, Kevin asked, do you flavor the yogurt that you make?
Oh, not during the process. It comes out plain and unsweetened. And then sometimes I just add granola. That's plenty. And then sometimes I add a little jam to mix it up a little bit. And then one of my favorite combinations is to add almond butter and some cocoa powder.
Oh, and that sounds good.
It's really good. It kind of comes out like pudding. Yes. So, and then sometimes I'll add some blueberries or something in there, some berry, but those are my top combos.
Yeah, that sounds fantastic. Almond butter and cocoa powder. That sounds really good. I might have to get me some just plain yogurt and just try that. Although maybe I shouldn't let my 7-year-old try that. This might be his new obsession.
Right. It's sweet cocoa. It's like actually okay. It's not too bad.
Well, that's true. That's true. Yep. As long as it doesn't have, all the sugar in it, he's probably okay. So the past year and 4 months have really been a challenge for a lot of people, including those in the mental health field. What have been some of the biggest challenges you've seen in teletherapy, and what have been some of the biggest wins that you've had in this past recent time?
Right. Well, one of the big wins is that people, and there's two sides to this coin. People are more willing right now to seek out mental health, mental care. So, and that's fantastic because the stigma's kind of been removed. Everybody recognizes that we're under a tremendous amount of stress. And so people are seeking it out. The downside to that is that there's a limited number of therapists and people's caseloads are full. And people still need help. So that's kind of a struggle within the field, but it's a blessing also. People are seeking out assistance, and that's fantastic. I think there's been no less stigmatized time for getting mental health care right now.
Yeah, I've really noticed just a lot of people being more and more open to talking about their own mental health and the challenges that they're facing, and some of that I think was already happening before COVID hit. Like I was feeling that trend of just people starting to be more open to talking about things. I wasn't getting super shocked looks from people anymore when I was talking about mental health, and still the occasional one, but but now it's a lot more. Even the company that I work for is really open about, hey, we've got this 1 Million Lives program, and everybody make sure you're doing a mental health check-in and make sure you're taking breaks throughout the day, not only for like coffee in the bathroom, but just to take a step outside and kind of take care of yourself. And for a big company, that's a big freaking deal to come out and be like, no, your mental health is actually really valuable, and as a company we want you to take care of yourself. So I think that's a really big blessing that's come out of this for sure.
Absolutely. And telehealth has, I mentioned barriers to accessing mental health previously, and telehealth has removed some of those barriers.
Yeah.
if it's difficult to get off work during your lunch hour to come to a mental health appointment, now you can just do it on telehealth, and you don't have to leave your office.
Mm-hmm.
And there are, again, two sides to this. Sometimes people are like on the beach and the wind is blowing or whatever. And the therapist is envious anyway. Or it's just there's a lot of people around. Like for some of our youngers, there are other siblings around, and it's really hard to do therapy when you've got a ton of people around you.
Mm-hmm.
So there's a little bit of a downside to that, but honestly, like telehealth has opened up a lot.
Yeah.
And if we were forced to do it, and it's I think that it has benefited so many people. It's really kept the field going. It's really kept people going, I think, to be able to access it and access it on their own terms.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, absolutely. I know for me, I went to doing teletherapy sessions with my therapist, and it's like part of the challenge is that then my whole family is around. My kids are around, and I have to close the doors, and I've got 2 doors on this office, and still my 7-year-old's going to open one of those doors during the session. Like, it's just going to happen. And I had to tell him, hey, mommy's in therapy, you need to close that door. But then at the same time, like, I don't have to find childcare. I don't have to worry about leaving them at home or anything with a babysitter. I don't have to pay for childcare. I don't have to, it's so much easier to be like, no, I'm going to have a 60-minute session, and it's going to take 60 minutes. Like, that's it. That's the whole time. That part's fantastic.
Exactly. Yes. And I mean, I lost a couple of clients because they didn't want to do telehealth.
Yeah.
And they just really preferred in-person work.
Mm-hmm.
And I guess that's fine. I think I also gained some clients. I was reading an article about how telehealth has really changed mental health practice. And this person was saying, before you could look around, you could, talk, you didn't have to stare the person in the face, but now you're staring them in the face. And I thought, not necessarily with my clients. I have clients who were like, they'll just turn off the camera, like if they can't deal. Mm-hmm. And that's okay. Like, whatever way you can show up, you can show up.
Yeah.
And I had somebody whose computer changed, and they no longer had a webcam. So I would watch them. She would screen share, and I'd watch her play video games, and we would talk during that, which was awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, I mean, it just opened up so much, and
mm-hmm.
Yeah. It was, I think that's, and now we know, right? Now we know we have that flexibility. Like a lot of other businesses know.
Yes.
That we have flexibility now, and there might be no going back.
I know. Our office is opening up to 25% starting next week, and it's like you have to reserve a half-day shift in the office and this and that, and I'm just like, or I'll just stay home. Right. Or I just won't come back into the office. Like, everything I do can be done from here, and boy has it been nice. I think, once a month going in, meeting with the whole team, doing performance reviews and stuff in person every month, I think that's going to be important to do. But other than that, like, I just want to go in, treat my team to a lunch once a month, and then, continue at home with Teams calls all day.
Exactly. And we've experienced that too. The team that I work with is pretty cohesive, actually. Mm-hmm. But it was more so when we were able to do things like have potlucks and do things together. And we had to stop doing that for the past year and a half. And I think morale has suffered a bit from it, but we're going to be starting that back up at some point. And like you said, like once a month coming in, I mean, I go into the office once a week, and it's been great. I see some people and then I'm done. And I can just be at home. And that was a real blessing.
Yeah. And I do have some team members who they want to be in the office. They want to go in every day. And I'm like, that's great. If you want to go in, then sign up for as many of those sessions as you want. But, we'll just work however people want to work. I think this past year and almost a half has really proved that you don't have to be in person, and you don't have, it's not about butts and seats, which is so much of the thinking prior was just, if your butt is not in that seat from 8 to 5, you're not really doing your job. And the reality is, even if their butt is in that seat from 8 to 5, they're probably not as effective as if you weren't just hawkeyeing where they are sitting at the whole time. So, laugh for a purpose. I really like this comment. So he said, with the blessing that comes out of it and more people are talking about it, and this is talking about mental health, I'm seeing a lot of self-diagnosis, and with all the bright side happening, this does scare me a lot. I think that's a really, really good point. Is that a lot of people are kind of hopping on that self-diagnosis train.
Right. I agree. And I've had tons of clients come to me and say, like, so-and-so says I'm bipolar, or so-and-so says this. My mom says I'm this. My mom says I'm hyperactive. And I mean, there's a lot of, I will say that you can have a good idea, and if you have an idea about something that might be problematic, that's when you go to your mental health clinician, or you start getting mental health therapy, and you talk to them about the concerns that you have. Mm-hmm. Because what I find out a lot, and again, I work with a particularly specific population, so there's a lot of trauma work that I do. So what I find out is that a lot of times when people say that they have been told they're bipolar, or when people say that they are this or that, or that they're having panic attacks, or these kinds of diagnoses, what I'm seeing is responses to trauma. Mm-hmm. And that's particularly significant because we've all undergone trauma in the past year and a half. And I cannot emphasize this enough. It wasn't just a pandemic. We had social unrest. We had a volatile election cycle that is continuing to be volatile. Mm-hmm. And friendships were shattered. Families experienced schisms. Religious communities were fractured. There was so much that happened over the past year and a half. It has been really scary. And not to mention the loss and grief of people being sick, people losing family members and friends. Even if people recover, and this is not something that's talked about a whole lot, even if people get COVID and recover, there are long-term effects that can happen. And so people then have to struggle with a whole new way of being. And it's been such a struggle. So, I mean, back to the original question about diagnoses, we've undergone a ton of trauma right now. So rather than trying to specify like, oh, my brain chemistry is off, let's talk about the things that have happened and how behavior may have changed over the last year and a half, because that's a distinct possibility as well. Yeah. But clinicians undergo a lot of training to not just find a diagnosis, but to do differential diagnoses, like ruling out certain diagnoses that may look like what's happening. And that's why we do consultations with other psychologists or social workers or other clinicians. It's why we have supervision. Clinical supervision is to talk about these things. So there's a huge vetting process that mental health workers undergo. to assign a diagnosis, and we don't really do it lightly. So
Yeah.
I would encourage people to try not to self-diagnose, because we're so close to our own stuff. Really tough to be objective enough to come up with something accurate.
Yeah. Well, and also I think that some people might not realize that in the DSM, like there are so many things overlapping, and you have to meet a certain number of criteria for each diagnosis, but there's so many of those things that you could have 5 from this and 5 from this, but really it's just these 5 that matter for your diagnosis. And so that's a big ball of wax that people, like you're saying, take years to understand and years to get that training and years to be able to do that. There is a recent study that says that if you Google, after you get a diagnosis, you Google information about that diagnosis and then take that to your provider and ask questions in an informed manner, that you get better care. But that study didn't. That study also pointed out that like diagnosing yourself doesn't come from Google. Like that's still not a thing. That's still not a good thing to do. WebMD is still going to tell you cancer no matter what it is. So yeah, you should definitely research a diagnosis after a professional provides it, for sure. But yeah, I think the self-diagnosis issue, that's a big issue. Right.
It is. And I mean, I really like that too. Yeah. Once you get a diagnosis from a professional, research it, be actively engaged in your treatment plan, right? Be actively engaged in what comes after the diagnosis, because after the diagnosis is where all the magic happens. We're just talking about what's happening right now in your life, and then we go on a journey.
Yeah. Well, and also, I mean, there's a chance that you have more than one diagnosis, but you can treat everything under one of those diagnoses. And I'll use my son as an example. He has Tourette's, but his providers have also said, ADHD, and they were, because of the stigma with the school and ADHD, they were like, we're not going to put that in his file. He has it, but we can cover everything that he needs under this Tourette's syndrome diagnosis. And so because there's that, if you go about trying to just diagnose your child or yourself with something, and you say ADHD instead of Tourette's, like you go down one path, it might not be the best path, and it's, providers know all of that. Like they just immediately, they're like, this is what you need to do. And
right.
Yeah.
Right. Well, and it's super great too when you have a provider who's familiar with all the systems that you're engaged in.
Yeah, absolutely.
Medical systems, all of that. So then they can help you navigate that.
Medwiser said that's the main difference between the DSM-4 and the DSM-5. I think you're talking about the number of different things. It's right up there with self-medication. Yeah, it's also very important to have your medical providers working hand in hand with one another. Very good point. Yes, absolutely. Yep.
Absolutely. Yeah. There are so many medical conditions that have a behavioral component. And so we always have to take that into consideration as well. This whole mind-body Cartesian split, right? It's been very, it's not been good. And so we tend to think of mental health as being over here, and then bodily health over here, and we don't mix the two, or we don't let the two talk to each other. And the fact is that like two of our biggest neuroreceptors are mostly or in part created in our gut. So like our physical health is actually like very important to our mental health, right? So our serotonin made in our gut, dopamine made in our gut, like all of the things that make us feel good, right? So, and that's just one little example. Diabetes has a behavioral component, and if blood sugar rises or falls, it can really affect somebody's behavior. And if people aren't familiar with those things, they're going to attach diagnoses or labels to the behavior without understanding where it comes from. And we just need to understand the whole body.
Yeah. Yep, absolutely. So why is it especially important to take care of our mental health right now? And kind of as we come to the post-pandemic stage of COVID in some areas, I know there are new variants. I'm definitely not saying the pandemic is over. Please wear your mask as required. Get your shot. I am a huge advocate for getting your shot. If you're not, that's you. But I'm just saying. But why is it important right now to take care of our mental health?
There's a lot of change right now. Everything is in flux. And so some people are returning to work. Some people have been at work this whole time. And it's really important to take care of our mental health now because we're dealing with so much anxiety and fear. And, fear is about an immediate threat, and anxiety is about anticipating an immediate threat. And so both of those are present right now. And then there's just people's individual personalities and how they've dealt with being alone or being in a house with family members. And sometimes those aren't healthy relationships. And so you might be dying to get out, or right, and get back into the world. Or I'm an introvert, and so I have some anxiety. Like I've watched friendships shatter. I've watched groups fragment, and it's really kind of nerve-wracking to go back out into the world and have to figure out where your place is. And so it is really important to get access to mental health right now. And then there's also grief for what we had before that we're not going right back to.
Mm-hmm.
We can't go right back to it. And that's definitely a grieving process, even if it wasn't great, even if it was somewhat toxic. In many cases it was. We need to get through that. And it's okay to grieve toxic things when they leave our lives and toxic people when they leave our lives. So, it's just everything is so in flux right now. I just think we really need all the support we can get.
Yeah, I absolutely agree. I think that a lot of people are looking at this as things are opening back up. It's going to go back to normal, but it's a new normal. It's not going to be the same as it was before. Things are different. Things are going to be different. And in some ways that's good. And in some ways maybe it's not. But that's difficult.
Yeah.
So
go ahead.
Oh, I was just going to say stress can cause all kinds of reactions from emotional to physical, like we were just talking about. Everything's tied together. Your brain, your mental health is still part of your physical health too. Like it's physically in your head. Is there anything in particular that pandemic related stress has caused?
I think reintegration anxiety is big. Like I mentioned before, everything's different now, and relationships are different now. And I just think people are really struggling with, how do I go back into the world? How do I engage with people that I disagreed with when all of these things were happening? Right? And now I have to go see them in person maybe, or I have to work with them, or I have to worship with them, or how do I do that? Like that's huge negotiation. And I just think that is a real particular one, that and grief. I think people should be doing their grief work. Like I said, there's a lot to grieve right now. The loss of people, but also the loss of relationships and the loss of our old normal. There's a lot of loss. And it's okay to acknowledge that. It's okay it's also like and these things don't have to be one or the other. Like, we can have both. We're very complex creatures.
No.
And so we can be anxious and excited at the same time. We can be grieving and happy at the same time. So it's okay to acknowledge all of those emotions. And I really want to validate people having a multitude of experiences at this time. It's such a real complex time. I mean, we live in complex times anyway, but yeah, it's we're just dealing with those in particular. I think reintegration anxiety and grief and loss are probably the two top ones.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, and I want to touch on the grief and loss also, because we've talked about grief and loss on here before. We've had whole segments about death positivity, about grief and loss. But especially in the last year and a half, it's been, people have died and other people haven't been able to go to the service. And it's one of those things, my uncle died just recently and I got to go to the service, but I know that a lot of people didn't get to go. And it's one of those things that even though that was fairly recent, it's still a block. I mean, it's still kind of a barrier to being able to go, and you might think, how important is a service? And to some people, it's really important. To some people, it's really important. It gives them that closure, that little piece of, okay, we have honored our loved one and, laid them to rest and everything. And a lot of people haven't had that in the past, year and a half. And it's not great.
Yeah. I mean, it's a rite of passage, right? Acknowledging somebody important who has passed beyond the veil, right? And rites of passage are community events. They're relational events. Let's put it that way. Because sometimes it happens just between two people, but it's still important. It's a relational event, and it's an acknowledgement that this thing has happened, and it affects me, or has changed me in some way. And so, and not being able to do that in community or with the other people with whom you share a relationship has been an enormous struggle. I really want to acknowledge that and validate that those things, graduations, huge rite of passage.
Yeah.
Weddings, funerals, just so much. Birth, right? Baby showers were happening over Zoom. So, all of these things have really been challenged. And like you said, it's exciting to go back, but not everybody can do it.
Yeah.
And there are still travel issues, and I was recently on a plane a couple months ago, and it's nerve-wracking. Let me just tell you. It was, that was before Washington really opened up, so it was stressful.
Yeah, I was just on a plane. I just went on vacation to Mexico, and it was the first time I had traveled in over a year via plane. And boy, I had forgotten that I really have a lot of anxiety at takeoff and landing. Like that's my moment of, I like everything else about traveling. Takeoff and landing, I'm like, I'm gonna say this is the only time in my life I'm gonna say the Lord's prayers at those 2 points every time I fly. Like that's it. I feel like my prayers are what help us land safely. So.
Whatever works.
Right. But those are the kinds of things that, I hadn't done it in so long. I had completely forgotten about it until it hit me all of a sudden.
Right. Well, when I started going back into the field one day a week, and I forgot about something simple, like if it's a long day that I go, like usually 10 to 12 hours, and I take a meal or two with me, and it's just a lot of prep work. Right? And so it's just getting everything ready and getting it all prepped for the morning, because I'm a zombie in the morning. I can't
Same.
function, right? And so I just need to have it all prepared and ready to go.
Yeah.
Otherwise, I can't do it. And there's just a lot of prep work to travel and go somewhere, you know, for an extended period of time. And yeah, there's so much adjustment happening right now.
Yeah. So what are some ways that individuals can cope with their pandemic related feels? And does that change when we've talked about, you know, kind of family units already, but does that change when you widen that lens from an individual to a family unit?
Well, I think it's good to recognize that different people are going to feel different things. The introverts might be like, a little nervous, and extroverts will be like, get me out, ready to go. Let's do this thing. Let's have a party. And but not all, right? Like some extroverts are still going to be anxious, and that's going to create some internal conflict, right? I want to see people. I'm afraid to see people. And then some introverts are like, I'm terribly lonely and I don't want to leave the house. All of that is normal and okay. And I really want to normalize all of those feelings, right? So to really just acknowledge and give yourself permission to feel, I think is the first step. None of those feelings is wrong. None of those feelings is going to lead you down a terrible path. It's just what those feelings just are. And so that's, I think, step number one. And then take it slowly, take things incrementally. Try, if you're nervous about seeing people, like try a couple of friends first before going to a big party. Right? And see how that goes and see what your comfort levels are. It's hard to anticipate what it's going to feel like to go back to the office, to go back to church or synagogue, to go back to social gatherings with friends. Just hug somebody else who hasn't been in your bubble. And again, like sometimes families aren't super harmonious. And so there's a lot of guilt that comes with that. And again, being gentle with ourselves and accepting that about ourselves and about our situations, if that's the case, don't punish yourself for it. Try to work on the dynamics by all means. But if you're super excited to see other people besides the people in your family, like that's okay too. No one or two people can serve all of our needs.
Yeah.
So that's important to know. And then, coping strategies are as numerous as there are people. So whether it's playing video games online and having a community, or whether it's finally getting together to play an RPG, right? To play D&D with folks, or journaling, and of course, engaging in mental health care.
Yes.
Right? Mental health care is another way to do it. Having somebody who is non-judgmental and objective is super important. And I really want to emphasize the non-judgmental because sometimes that's hard to find, right? Therapists are people too. So
yes.
We have to work pretty hard sometimes at, we want to be another human in the room. That's the whole point, right? Therapy is a relational act. And the therapy is often in the relationship. But at the same time, I can't have myself filmed, right? I am there as a presence, as an accepting, loving presence, for people. And that's my job.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I think that it was amazing that during the pandemic, a lot of people coped by learning to cook, learning to bake, learning to make yogurt.
There you go.
And, and they took the opportunity to try new things, right? Everything's up in the air. I don't know what's happening tomorrow. Let's just bake bread. And, we can carry that into our new normal as well. That kind of excitement with newness. I think some old toxic habits could have broken. So, and that's a coping strategy, right? Infusing that newness is also a coping strategy.
And I feel like at some points it might be difficult to re-enter, everything and busy schedules and everything, and still hold on to those new, quote unquote, new habits that you've picked up. And if you haven't picked up any new habits, that's okay too. But, it's one of those things that if you can incorporate those, maybe you don't incorporate those as much as you did. But if you can, it's nice. I started cooking a lot more. And it's not that I didn't cook before. It's not that I didn't like to cook before, but I started cooking a lot more than I did pre-pandemic because I got tired of, ordering everything through an app and paying all the extra the extra fees that come with it instead of just going and getting, going to a restaurant or whatever. And it's one of those things that I'm going to do my best to keep cooking, and maybe not as much as I was whenever I start going back, because just the nature of going to and from the office and having a family and pickup schedules and recreational schedules are about to start back up with this next year and everything. So all of that stress is going to come back. But if I can still, cook once or twice a week, it's one of those things that you can rely on that new skill that you've maybe acquired in the past year and a half.
Yeah, yes, exactly. And I just want to encourage people to be gentle with yourself as you readjust and reintegrate. You're just manage your expectations. Like, no, it's not going to be exactly the way it was. And also, it's not going to be exactly the way it was pre-pandemic. It's not going to be exactly the way it was during the pandemic. We're going to create a new reality now. And it will incorporate a whole lot of the old reality, but still there's going to be some newness, and that's okay. Just, hold it lightly and be creative. We're in a pretty interesting time.
Yeah. Are there unhealthy ways of handling your mental health? And what are some warning signs that maybe someone is going down an unhealthy path?
So I would say that pretty much anything to excess is a warning sign. Sleeping 12, 16 hours a day would be pretty excessive. For some people, like if you're recovering from an illness, absolutely not. Right. But if you're otherwise fairly healthy, sleeping that much could indicate a physical issue, like a medical issue, or it could also indicate stress, and it can indicate depression. So anything to excess. I am a big fan of having a glass of whiskey, right? But if I do it every day, or if I do it several times a day, anything to excess is where we need to really look at our habits and our coping strategies. Even video gaming, and a lot of people like to. I get a lot of parents who are like, they're addicted to video games, and, and I'm the gamer therapist, right? And I'm like, let's talk about this, but anything to excess, right? If they're avoiding homework, if they're not sleeping, then yes, we're looking at a pattern of behavior that might be problematic. But at the same time, that's not about the video game. That's about coping. And that's about something deeper. And I would say that about anything that's excessive, right? It's usually about something else. So, there's some general things to keep ourselves healthy and well-rounded, I guess. But if we have pretty good relationships and they're not being impacted by the things that we do, I think you're doing all right. I'm not going to yuck somebody's yum, right? I'm not going to, I'm not going to tell anybody their coping strategy is terrible. If it's working, if it's keeping you in relationships, and friendships and things like that, if it's maintaining those things in your life, it's probably okay. Yeah.
Yeah, it's definitely one of those things that, my kids play games and they're both big into Animal Crossing. And I'm like, as long as they're not neglecting sleep, other friends, they're taking care of chores and all of that. Now, that's not to say, like, I have a 7-year-old and a 14-year-old, so I get plenty of sass about chores and things.
I bet.
But I got that before Animal Crossing too, so...
Exactly.
It's one of those things that I game a lot. I don't play Animal Crossing. I don't have a Switch or anything, but I have a lot of friends who do. And as long as I'm not, not eating, not sleeping, well, sometimes I do stay up too late gaming. That's for sure. Trying to finish some sort of mission in 7 Days to Die or whatever. But yeah, right. Like I feel like that's just part of the hobby.
Yeah, exactly.
But if I start neglecting things, I think that's the biggest warning sign that I hear over and over is just, are you neglecting other parts of your life? Are you neglecting people in your life in favor of whatever this habit or hobby is?
Right. There was a web series called The Guild that was poked gentle, loving fun at people in a World of Warcraft guild. They didn't call it World of Warcraft; they called it The Game. But Felicia Day wrote it, and
love her.
Love her too. And anyway, it was really funny because it kind of highlighted some of these difficulties, right? With, and so. Somebody who would isolate and not really engage with other people except online. And someone who was neglecting their parenting and things like that. And they grew in the series, which was pretty awesome to see that. But I don't know, it's this hysterical show. It's super, super funny.
What was it called?
It's called The Guild. It's on YouTube. And it came out in these little tiny segments of like 5 to 15 minutes. And now, and they had like 5 seasons, which are really just 5 45-minute shows now.
Yeah.
So highly recommend. It's very funny. Very funny.
Well, I just found it. I popped it into the chat. So if anybody's interested in checking it out, there it is. I'll have to check it out. It sounds funny. So are there some comorbidities like trauma or dementia or depression that put people at higher risk for that unhealthy coping?
So there are comorbidities that I think substance use plus anything is going to put people at a higher risk because it's going to accentuate anything, or substance abuse. Having, like I said, having a couple of drinks throughout the week is one thing. Having a couple of drinks every day might be another thing altogether, right? And trauma has such a wide range of symptoms, and can come from, they used to call trauma just something that happened that was sudden and life-threatening that was just one event. And the definition of trauma has really shifted in the past several years. So now we're recognizing complex trauma, which is, can be a traumatic situation or environment, from childhood, from early childhood, or since birth even. We can talk about pre-verbal trauma, which is really difficult to get to, because there's no language to encapsulate it, and there's just this raw emotion, and we don't know where it comes from, right? So it can really hijack a person's behavior, right? And it can do so for decades, unless we can really kind of dig deeper and find it. So, there's that kind of trauma. And I think if someone has a proclivity to a particular mental illness and then experiences trauma or sudden grief and loss, those things are going to accentuate depressive symptoms, right? Self-isolation, possible self-harm, kind of self-negating language, self-harming language. And I also want to, and dementia also, right? Dementia is, if we're talking about age-related dementia, we have a lot of medical comorbidities there, right? Dementia can actually be caused by arteries clogging. Happened to my grandmother, right? So we can experience that, and it's so confusing. But I also want to highlight something that I've kind of discovered with some of my clients, which is that sometimes a clinician might characterize a certain coping mechanism as a negative, when I would rather conceptualize it as a positive thing. And that is kind of the retreat into an imaginal space. Gaming does a lot of that, right? If you're playing Final Fantasy and you're doing a lot of role play in the Final Fantasy MMO, that is an imaginal space. And it's a place that we can kind of project ourselves into, and it creates a buffer so that when we experience trauma, there's like a pocket of something there, right? A pocket of resilience, and that cushions us from that trauma. I've known youth that I've worked with who've undergone horrific trauma, and so did their siblings. But if this one youth, I had a youth who retreated into anime, and her sibling did not, and did not have that cushion, didn't have that buffer. And her sibling had a lot more symptomology, like a lot more depressive symptoms, isolation and anger, just rage. And then my client, who was super into anime, was super resilient about it. Like, she was, she could engage with other people. She could still be honest about what had happened, right? She wasn't shutting it out or pretending it never existed. She was engaged in therapy. She was resilient. She was able to maintain hope. And a lot of people at the time characterized the retreat into anime as scary and negative. Not necessarily. And I really want to emphasize that, because stories are important.
Mm-hmm.
Right? Stories are, that's why I do narrative therapy, right? Is we have stories that engage us and draw us in and are super compelling. And I think that those stories can really help us through really difficult times. whether it's teaching us how to be or giving us a place to put our hearts while the whirlwind happens.
Yeah.
So,
that's great. So you mentioned resilience, and I want to dig into that a little bit deeper. So even those with a strong built up resilience are really feeling worn down by now.
yep.
So how do you go about rebuilding that resilience after the pandemic, after everything returns to new normal? How do you rebuild that resilience?
I think finding out what that normal is, so you know what you're dealing with, and also recognizing that that's going to shift and change as the months. A year from now, things are so. I mean, we're opening up now. Some places are opening up now, but a year from now, it's going to be a whole different story, right? And it's okay to ride that wave. Giving yourself permission to feel what you're feeling, because blocking those or denying those feelings is going to stifle resilience. So giving yourself permission to feel whatever it is that you're feeling. Feelings aren't wrong. So doing things like that, engaging in things that are self-care, and self-care can look a lot of different things. Sometimes self-care is hard because sometimes self-care is doing dishes or cleaning the bathroom, or but it's stuff that keeps us going. Right? We need clean dishes, we need a clean bathroom, we need to clean the litter box or take the dog out, right?
As I look over at my cat. Clean your own litter box.
I used to tell my cat that too. Man, that never worked.
Yeah. Nope. So far has not worked for any cat I've ever had.
I think finding things that that keep us emotionally alive, and not volatile alive, but keep us awake and alive and feeling. That's important. That is really where our resilience lies, I think. When things get super deadening or super volatile, I think that's where we need to maybe focus on where there may not be resilience.
Yeah.
Building up those and those relational moments too, I think is really important. I was thinking about the tags presentation I did that you saw, where I talked about MMOs and the different roles, right? Tank, damage, and healer. And we all need a healer behind us, right? To build our army, or to keep us going while we fight whatever it is that we're fighting. So identify those people in your life. Who's your healer? Or if you're doing the healing, who's your tank? Who's doing damage on this stuff while you guys are doing that? Just find out who's engaging in those roles for you, and appreciate them, recognize it, call it out. It's okay to call that into being, and into awareness. But I think those are the kinds of things that really build resilience, is those relational aspects, healthy relationships, and just finding those strategies that aren't going to overwhelm our lives.
Yeah. Yeah. And if anyone wants more on that tank healer damage presentation. I just put the link again to the tags presentations. You can go to Tanya's speaker page and you can click through there and get a media pass. It was a great presentation. And Kevin, I just put that part of her bio in there, so you can read through that if you want. So we kind of talked around this, but is there any advice or an exercise, a calming exercise or anything like that you would give to folks who might be a little bit reluctant to do things like return to the office or go back to meeting friends in person, fully vaccinated, no new variants, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera?
Agreed.
But is there anything you would say to people who are struggling with that?
Again, it's okay to feel the feelings that you have. It's okay to acknowledge them. I would also, I can't deny the importance of breath, and I feel like it's a little ironic because COVID attacked the breath. For a lot of people, not everybody had breathing difficulties in COVID, but the breath is so important. It is important in a lot of different spiritual traditions, but it's also, we use it a lot with anxiety work. And I used to be like, breathing work, whatever. And then I worked with horses, oddly enough. And horses are prey animals, so they are super perceptive about your emotional state. And we're predator animals, right? So they're going to be very receptive to how we're breathing, and so they're going to pick up our anxiety. And what I learned is anxiety and fear breathing is in and out through the mouth and kind of shallow, like you breathe here to the top of your chest or the middle of your chest. And deep relaxation breathing is in and out through the nose, and it's like sleep, right? It'll put you right to sleep. Relaxation breathing, like intentional relaxation breathing, is in through the nose and out through the mouth. And what that does is when anxiety spins us up, we engage in fear breathing. And what happens to our nervous system at that point is that the frontal lobe shuts down. And then we start getting oxygen to our extremities because we're ready to run. So relaxation, or not deep relaxation breathing, but into the nose and out through the mouth, that kind of breathing, calm breathing, is about getting oxygen back into your brain, into your frontal lobe, re-engaging the reasoning centers, and calming your body down. So if people start feeling their heart rate increase, I would encourage that. I would encourage journaling if you really want to name your feelings and track how that's going. Interestingly enough, there are a lot of really cool mental health apps. They don't take the place of a therapist, but therapists are in short supply right now. It's sometimes hard to get into and get access to care. Having these apps available can be super helpful. And sometimes they're really cute. There's one that's very dry, but it's got a lot of information that you can send to a therapist or send to a significant other who might be wanting to monitor your mental state or your emotional state at that point. And that's an interesting feature. But having something like that can also just like take the focus off what's happening and put it into something else, and then you can think again.
Yeah.
Right? All that energy gets out of your fear and into like, oh, where's my app? And let's open it up and engage it, and then that can help take the energy out. So it can take some of the air out of that.
Do you have any apps that you would recommend in particular?
Yes, actually, I have several mood tracker apps. One of them is called Of course, my mind's going to go blank right
That's okay.
now. One's called Wobot. It's WOEBOT.
Oh, that's cute.
It's adorable. And it uses like legit CBT techniques, cognitive behavior therapy. And they talk about, it talks about black and white thinking. It talks about, it gives like little movies and exercises and quizzes to talk about all of these different concepts. I find it really engaging. There's another one called #self-care, and it's made by, when you open it up, it's by True Love, TRULUV. But it's a much more colorful, creative type space. But it's all about self-care. So you see somebody and they're laying in bed with a messy room, and it's all about kind of putting things away. Like I was talking about before, doing the dishes can be self-care, right?
Mm-hmm.
Putting your dirty laundry away can be self-care. Putting your clean laundry in the drawer can be self-care. Feeding the kitty, like all of these things. And that's kind of the kind of stuff that's in that app. And that's a real fun one. Mood Tracker is the app that I was talking about. That's a little bit drier. There are several different scales, and there's sliders, and you just move where you are that day, and then it'll send it to your provider or, your significant other or your
Who's the maker of that one? Just because when I type in Mood Tracker app, it pops up all sorts of. Oh wait, maybe it just says moodtracker.com. I'll bet that's it.
Yeah. And it's actually, it's just called Mood Tracker.
Yeah, I think I found the right one.
So those are three that I'm fairly familiar with. And I don't know, I just find it really, whatever you like. If you don't mind the dry one, if that's more suitable to you, it's a ton of information, and it can track anxiety levels, it can track trauma, it can track all kinds of neat stuff. If you really just want the creative one, there's that too. There's a lot of really cool stuff out there. And then there are also really positive social media accounts.
Mm-hmm.
When I talk to the youth that I work with, I talk to them about these social media accounts because some of them are really amazing. And they're often run by people who have been through stress and trauma and depression and those kinds of things. So they can be really encouraging.
Mm-hmm.
One of them, Sweatpants and Coffee, and she has Mania Hoffman is the creator, and I believe she's on all three, Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook. Jamila Jamil is also mostly on Instagram, and she is amazing. She is super body positive, and she takes apart the entertainment industry's focus and the way they define beauty. And so I look at stuff like that. I don't know. I also in terms of encouraging resilience, I also ask people like what are their favorite movies? What's their favorite kind of music? And do you have any new music you share with me? Like, engage that relational aspect, but also like finding new things, things that are uplifting and positive, I think. But I don't want to emphasize toxic positivity. Like, things aren't always positive. Sometimes it's really nice to be cathartic.
Yeah.
Just
definitely.
right. Um, I used to listen to a lot of still sometimes do listen to a lot of angry music for that reason, because it's cathartic to listen to that, right? But there's some really great artists, musical artists out there who are doing incredible things, talking about anti-colonialism, and tackling, being between cultures, and addressing trauma in the streets, right? Uh, Really good stuff out there.
Yeah.
I can if you want, but like I've always.
So Mud has a question. So they said, my stepson once said he doesn't engage in daily chores due to being so overwhelmed he doesn't know where to begin. What advice would you offer him? And I will say, like, I remind you, I am not a professional in any way, shape, or form, but I have two different approaches that I take with my kids. With one of my kids, he likes to see his stuff get done. Like, he likes to see something get done quickly. And so if I can give him, I can't tell him, go clean your room, but I can tell him, go pick up all your clothes. And so breaking that task into tiny tasks that he can then feel like, I'm done with that part. With my 14-year-old, it's the opposite. Like, they want to get a big job done. They want to get a big thing done. And so I'll give them, like, okay, clean your bathroom first. That's the smaller room. So you get that momentum, and then you move into something bigger that maybe isn't going to get done today, but that you can make progress on. And as long as they feel like they're constantly making progress, that's what works for them. So I don't know how your stepson prefers to work on things, but I know from having two kids at home all the time, they're each completely different with how they like to work stuff. But I'll pass that question over to you as well.
Yeah, I mean, I exactly what you said. I run into a lot of kids who are so overwhelmed they can't get their stuff done, and so I definitely encourage people to break it down into smaller bits, because what happens is they're looking down the road and they're seeing this giant thing they want to do, and it just seems insurmountable. But if I just take the next steps, I saw an image the other day that said, like, don't look at the whole staircase, just look at the step that's in front of you.
Yeah.
And if the step in front of you is to put your socks on, the next step is to put shoes on. And the next step is to, I don't know, pick up your dirty clothes and put them in a hamper. Those little tiny steps, if that overwhelm, that's what the overwhelm sounds like. And so, yeah, just breaking it down and then giving permission and giving rest and breaks as well, right? Hey, you put your shoes and socks on. Awesome. Let's sit down for 5 minutes and go play on your Switch or something. Or we can play a game for 5 minutes, or have a snack and then go on to the next step. But having little positive rewards, even a high five or a hug session, like something like that, can reap a lot of benefits, I think. And just understanding too that, youth are going back into a classroom, or have gone back, in some cases have gone back into the classroom, after not seeing their friends. I know some kids who are like, yeah, I don't want to go back. Like, I did online school and it was perfect for me.
Right?
That's
my 14-year-old. My 7-year-old's the complete opposite.
Yep, exactly. Like, let me go back. And so different kids are going to respond in different ways. And again, we are complex beings. And so kids can be excited about going back and still be overwhelmed. Acknowledge, validate, talk about that. All of that stuff is okay to talk about. I can't emphasize that enough. That it's not wrong for them to feel overwhelmed. It's not wrong for anybody to feel a certain way, but talking about it can help really that's the work of problem solving right there, right? Is to gotta dig in and explore it a little bit.
Yeah.
And give permission.
Yep. They said the good thing is we're both on the same page. I was just making sure we didn't have different approaches. Great. And then I like how you did touch on reinforcement. I've noticed with my experiences that reinforcement gives them the desire to continue on, a sense of well done. Yeah, absolutely. And that's, you got to find out what motivates your kid too, right? Like my 14-year-old, they're motivated by seeing a clean space and being like, okay, good, I did that. My 7-year-old does not care. he wants like the sense of I finished that task, whether it makes his room look clean or not. He just wants to be like, how quickly can I get this done? Is it over? Am I done? Great.
right.
So you got to kind of get to know what it is. Yeah, every person is individually different. Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah. And I've encountered people who are comforted by clutter. Where an open, clean space feels a little dangerous and a little vulnerable for them, and so they keep clutter around as a protection.
Mm-hmm.
And so, the assumption for a lot of people, I think, is that a clean space means like an ordered mind or whatever, but it can be super anxiety producing as well. And that's why the relational part of this is so important. Find out what's motivating your child, find out what's overwhelming them, and work from there.
Yeah. We call that organized clutter. Yeah. Well, and in some cases, some people work better. They have to see something to know that it's there. Like they don't have that object permanence. And so they're like, if I forget that I have this certain dish, I'm just never going to take it out and use it. But if it's out on a counter in a designated space, if it's in its spot, but visible, you got to take that into account too. Just different stuff works for different people, and you just got to find what works for you. Yep. Not a single person is going to be exactly the same as another single person.
Yes, exactly.
Except for maybe me and my mother. We're like just clones of one another. So are there any regular habits that you either maintain yourself or that you encourage your clients to develop that you feel like might not get enough attention? We talked a bit about sleep, but that kind of support overall well-being.
I think really paying attention to our body's needs, and what I mean by that is, so I'm an indoor kid. I moved to the Pacific Northwest because I grew up in Florida, and but I was born in Canada, and so my natural proclivity is not for long sunny days. No, thank you. I actually there is there's seasonal affective disorder, which they call something different now. But there's also summer sad. There's a reverse of it where people get a little anxious and depressed with too much sun. That's me, right? And so to pay attention to those kinds of things. So the advice is get out there and get outdoors, and that's great if your body is suited to that.
Mm-hmm.
It is not. I love the outdoors, but I'm more about a forest walk, right? With dappled sunlight, it's mitigated by lots of leaves. And that sort of, you just got to pay attention to what is feeding your soul at the moment. And I don't think that's talked about enough, because we say things like get plenty of exercise, which is hard to say when you have an injury. Right. Get plenty of sleep. What if you sleep all the time? What if you have insomnia? What if you're going through a menopause and can't sleep? There's, people kind of throw out these old standards, but really kind of, I don't know, I say it again and again, paying attention to your body and how it responds to certain stimuli, and honoring that and saying, okay, my body does not like a lot of sun, right? I don't mind being in a little cave. um, I had a supervisor call me his little bat friend one time. It's really hard. But yeah, just paying attention to those things. But there is something to getting outside. And I can't recall what it is right now. But there is a Japanese term for forest therapy, where going out and taking a walk in the forest is therapeutic. And they've actually found that, and I don't have any references for you, and I'm so sorry.
Okay.
But they've actually found that there are some microbes in the dirt in the forest floor that can actually help alleviate depressive symptoms. So, firm believer in forest therapy. If you have a forest nearby, if you're in the middle of the city, that's going to be hard too, right?
Yeah.
So, like I said, pay attention to what your body is telling you. There is no set thing. No set way to do it. We can eat too much, we can eat too little, we can eat the wrong things, we can eat the right things, we can overdo making sure we eat the right things. Right? Not cut ourselves any slack. That is also an issue. And there's a diagnosis for that, but moderation is good. But paying attention. I just really want to emphasize that paying attention to what our bodies are needing. Screen time, I can go to bed right after looking at screens, but not everybody can. I think it is a good idea to turn off screens and then have at least some sort of bedtime routine to assist with sleep. Giving oneself permission. If we're going to talk about sleep a little bit, there is something called multiphasic sleep, right? Where some people, I used to do this in college. Some people sleep and then they're awake for a while and then they sleep again. And that was more prevalent in rural communities and pre-industrial communities, where you relied more on the sun to tell you when to be awake and when to be asleep. But like in the north, during the winter, the sun isn't out for very long.
Right.
So you can sleep for 4 hours, wake up and hang out for 3 hours, and go back to sleep for 4 hours. And people did that. And then go out in the middle of the night, talk to their neighbors, or read, or have sex, or whatever. They would live life for a few hours through the night. But pay attention and see what your body needs. I think those are really important. And then relational needs are very important. As much or as little as you need is okay. Like nobody's setting a standard there. Well, probably people are, but I'm not going to set a standard there.
Right.
But I would say to pay attention to what you need. If you have more relational needs than you have access to relationship at the moment, if it's possible to get a pet, I would recommend getting a pet. And I know a few people who getting a pet during the pandemic probably really alleviated a lot of mental health symptoms for them. Even it's a fish. I mean, I can anthropomorphize just about anything. So, yeah.
Look, I have all the pets, and I can tell you that even fish are rewarding. So,
and the funny thing is, I collect pets in my games as well. Yeah, it's this thing. Because I can't collect them all in my little apartment. Yeah, I mean, whatever relational things kind of work for you. making one or two really solid friends, or having a wide range of friends, whatever you can do. But those are the strategies. I really try to shy away from one size fits all.
Yeah, absolutely.
Does not.
Well, and we talked about that earlier, right? Everybody's an individual. No one person needs the same amount of anything. So I think the advice to just kind of know what you need is really important.
Yeah, and that takes a lot of self-awareness and checking in and stopping and taking a deep breath and paying attention to, like, how do I feel in my body right now, right? What is my stomach doing? What is my head doing? What is, am I distracted by thoughts? And being able to pay attention to that can be really instructive.
Yeah. Yeah, and Mud, I like your comment here. A lot of people don't realize too that when you're on certain medications, that can affect them being outdoors as well, because there's I'm allergic to a certain kind of antibiotic, and so I can only take certain kinds of antibiotics because of that. And there's one that my doctor used to prescribe, and I could be outside for, like, I'm not kidding you, 5 minutes, and I would come in with a sunburn that had me this color. Like it was just bam. And if I ignored that to say, like, no, I'm supposed to be outside for this much time, that's what I'm supposed to do, like, it can have real consequences. And then just recently also, not on antibiotics or anything, but I had gone outside with my kids and I came back and I had a heat rash because it was a very hot day, and we were out for too long, and I didn't stop for breaks when we were going on our little walk, and I hadn't taken any water with us, like all the things. And you just got to pay attention to your surroundings. Where you live makes a big difference, like you were talking about, makes a huge difference. If although you're getting all of our heat right now, I'm sorry about that, by the way.
This week is way better than last week.
Yeah, I know. Well, I have some friends who live in Seattle, and I was telling them, I was like, look, I would come and get it if I could. I would come take it back if I could.
And they were all like, please take it.
Yes, right. Well, because we're built for heat down here. We're not built for the freeze that we had. We're built for heat down here.
Right. Oh my goodness. Yeah. Thinking about that too. Medications can change a lot of things within the body, including what you can and cannot eat.
Yes.
Like I know that I think it's some SSRIs where you can't eat grapefruit. Grapefruit will interfere with how SSRIs will work. I think those are the medications, but
yeah, there's a couple different things that grapefruit can really jack with, or like grapefruit will just make it not effective, essentially. It's you got to pay attention. First of all, read all the labels. Second of all, make sure you talk to your doctor about what you're on, and talk to all your doctors about what you're on.
Right.
So if you weren't doing what you do now, or if you had chosen a different path, what would you be doing instead?
If I had gone with one of my hobbies, I would go with writing. I was actually a creative writing major.
Wow.
Hence
that's the storytelling. Yes.
Exactly. And so I still write in my spare time. But I had this moment so when I was 12, I wanted to be a nuclear physicist. And then a ballerina. So yeah, it was all over the place. But when I was in college, I had this great conversation. I didn't have a lot of confidence in college. Up until my late 20s, I was fairly timid. People who know me now are like, what? But and I remember having a conversation. I took a course in astronomy, stellar astronomy and cosmology. Sounds really scary. But I took it anyway, and I loved it. Like, I just grokked it, right? And I had this great conversation with my professor and about black hole theory. And spoiler, secret part of that is that I thought of this conversation. I started this conversation because of something I heard in a music lyric about black holes. And I was like, I wonder if that's true. So I asked her, and we had this great conversation about black hole theory and x-rays and stuff like that. And she asked me, she said, well, what's your major? Engineering? And no, I'm an English major. and but then it really got my head spinning at the time. And I was like, I could do this. I could do this. I could really go into astronomy. And so that might be the thing that I would choose.
Mm-hmm. It would fit with your background.
It would, wouldn't it?
Yep.
Astronomy is still present.
So we have a couple of community questions that people sent in ahead of time, and then if anyone in the chat has a question, you're free to type it in. But Bite Mark asks, "What is your favorite poem?"
Okay, so I'm just going to warn you that sometimes the questions that are what are your favorite blank has more than one answer.
That's okay. That's totally fine.
I really love a poem by Pablo Neruda called Enigmas. It was recited in part in a movie called Mind Walk, which is great. Look it up. It's little known, but it's fantastic. So there's that poem. I have loved since I was in college a poem by E.E. Cummings called When Everything Happens That Can't Be Done. Just a lovely, lovely poem. There are a couple spoken word performances too. So that's, spoken poetry, right? And Daniel Beatty is really good. And he did one called Duality Duel that is fantastic. And another one called Knock Knock. And those you can find those on YouTube. So good. And there's another one by, I wrote their names down. David Fasania and Gabriel Baralaga. They were teenage boys when this was put out, and it was on a TED educational TED Talk, and they're all grown up now, I'm sure. This was many years ago, but they did a brilliant spoken word performance called Beach Bodies, and it's all about body image in boys, which a lot of people don't think about. But it's just brilliant. So those are some of my favorites.
Yeah. Well, she will love that answer because she likes multi-part answers. So that's good. That gives her some stuff to go and check out and absorb and digest. And then Fiona also asked, what is your day-to-day experience like as a therapist, and what was your experience like when you were in school to become one?
My day-to-day experience as a therapist is I try to hold schedules lightly. I honor schedules, of course, but I try to hold them lightly. Stuff happens, and life happens, and sometimes people sleep through session, or that they just don't make it. And I also work in residential programs with homeless youth, and so stuff happens all the time. So I can't, I can't penalize people, right? So that's my day-to-day experience is really about, getting to know people and appreciating who they are and what their strengths are, particularly the youth that I work with. Are just brilliant. And it was Carl Jung who said that the therapeutic relationship is a relationship characterized by love. And that probably freaks some people out. That's okay. They can freak out.
That's right.
But I really try to bring that into my work as a therapist. Mm-hmm. And so my motivation is that I try to generate love and loving kindness towards my clients, and acceptance of them and their lives and who they are in the moment, when they walk in the door or when they come on a telehealth appointment. So that's really what I try to carry through. There's a lot of frustration too, because I work with a lot of systems. I work with CPS, and sometimes I work with, a lot of bureaucratic inertia. So trying to maintain all of those positive feelings, I really rely on the relationships that I form within therapy to manage the rest of it when I'm working with immovable systems.
Yeah. Immovable systems. That's a great way to put that. So there's feeling behind that.
Yep. And it's the cushion for when you bang your head against the brick wall. And that, that's another big part of my day-to-day life as a therapist is dealing with systems. Mm-hmm. And that can be really dehumanizing and occasionally humiliating for my clients. It's just really tough. And that makes it even more important for me to bring love and loving kindness into the room, right? To keep people motivated and keep people interested in the actual work that we're doing.
Yeah.
Despite those systems. And my training has been a lot of the good stuff. You can do all the book learning you want, but conversations with people have been extremely significant. Encouragement by supervisors, by teachers, extremely important. Anybody can read a book or something on the internet, but those conversations can be life altering at times. And getting your feet wet, really just getting in there and allowing myself to make mistakes. Nobody comes out of school, or nobody comes even out of the licensure process, a perfect therapist. Mm-hmm. And it's okay to acknowledge mistakes. It is actually really good role modeling to do so. And I have a couple, I've gone to clients and said, I responded this way last time, and that was the wrong way to do it, and I want to apologize, right? My real goal here is to honor you and not to have my own reactions. And a lot of my clients haven't gotten that. So allowing myself to make mistakes was big. Giving myself permission to speak and be bold in it is also big. Mm-hmm. I know a lot of people who are interns now. Not a lot. I mean, sometimes people just getting into the field have a difficult time with speaking to parents about what's going on with their kids. I work at a children and families clinic, so it's a lot about the kids. And then they have it's just hard to kind of, the imposter syndrome is big, right? It's huge. So like, it's just really hard to be like, yes, I'm here, I can do this, and I have some authority here, right? I have a presence here, and it's important.
Yeah.
That can be really hard to develop.
Yeah.
So that takes education, and it also takes, with the knowledge building, and then it also takes confidence building.
Right. Well, with that is now time for the magic moment. So I have this magic wand, and in a moment I'm going to activate it, and then I'm going to boop the camera here, and you are going to get to eliminate one common opinion, misconception, or theory surrounding mental illness, disabilities. We're talking about mental health. As soon as I activate it, that power is yours. So you tell me what it is, and here we go.
I'm going to eliminate the misconception that going to therapy means you are wrong or bad or is a punishment.
That is wonderful.
Yeah.
That's a big one, because so many people feel like if you're going to therapy, it means something's wrong.
Yeah, it means you're wrong as a person.
Yes.
That you're bad or, and I know a lot of my youth have been punished with therapy. And so they think that therapy is what happens when you, it's like getting grounded and go to therapy.
Yeah.
And it shouldn't be like that. Like, let's do fun things and have growth and, learn new skills and things. But
yeah,
what I would eliminate about mental health.
Yeah. That's fantastic. That's wonderful. Well, thank you so much. I'll just kind of open the floor to you and say if there's anything we didn't talk about, anything you want to cover, resources, anything you want to throw out there, feel free.
No, I mean, I didn't really talk about my work with human trafficking, and that's probably okay because that's, we do for hours.
We can have you back on to talk about that sometime if you want.
Yeah. If that's something you want to address. Like,
that's a whole other stream we could do.
It is absolutely that. So it's probably best that I didn't bring it up. No, I mean, I don't think there was anything that that we didn't cover. We talked about a lot today. Thank you. We did,
yeah. Thank you for being here. Chat, give me just a minute. I'm going to disconnect with our guest here, and I'll be back playing some Minion Masters and RuneScape probably, so stick around for that. But I will be right back, and thank you again just for joining us today.
Oh, thank you so much, everybody, for your questions. Those are great.
And that's a wrap on my conversation with Tanya Keenan. Tanya shared so many important insights about the role self-care plays in navigating life's challenges. From breaking down overwhelming tasks into smaller steps, to finding hobbies or communities that recharge you. Her perspective reminds us that taking care of ourselves is not optional, it's essential, especially in tough times. Think about some of the things Tanya talked about, whether it's anxiety, the weight of grief, or just figuring out how to function when the world feels heavy. These aren't abstract ideas. They're things we all face in one way or another. But as Tanya pointed out, resilience is something we can nurture. It's not about being unshakable. It's about figuring out what helps keep us grounded and moving forward, even when life feels messy or overwhelming. So here's my challenge for you. What's one thing you can do for yourself this week? Maybe it's trying out a new self-care habit, setting a boundary, or just giving yourself permission to feel whatever you're feeling without judgment. It doesn't have to be big or life-changing. It just has to be for you. If you enjoyed this episode and want to keep these conversations going, make sure to like, subscribe, and review Even Tacos Fell Apart on your favorite podcast platform. It really helps the show grow and reach more people who might need a reminder that it's okay to fall apart sometimes. And if something from today's episode stood out to you, I would love to hear about it. Connect with me on social media or leave a comment on the episode page. Your voice is an important part of this community. Thank you for being here and for being part of this journey. You matter, and the care you give yourself matters too. I'll see you next time, where we'll keep having these honest, real conversations about mental health, life, and everything in between. Take care of yourself this week. You deserve it.